Hello everybody and welcome to the Year of the Dragon. So it is Lunar New Year and today we are starting the Year of the Dragon, which means it's time for my dragon-based read-alongs. 2 years ago when I was checking when the Year of the Dragon was coming along and I saw it was near, I was like, in the Year of the Dragon it would be like perfect to read a lot of dragon books. And so from that moment onwards I was planning to do this read-along, and so it's finally time to get started. So, over the past few months I have been asking questions, doing polls over on my Discord in order to decide the books that we would be reading in the Year of the Dragon, and the following books are the ones that won. It will be a mix of standalones, novellas, graphic novels, series, first books in series that are still ongoing, a very big mix. I want to emphasize right straight from go that you don't have to read all of these books to be a part of the dragon-based read-along There Be Dragons. If you have some of these books on your shelves, for example you have 3 out of 12 on your shelves, feel free to hop in during the months in which those books are popping up. You don't have to feel like it's an all or nothing type of game. Dip in and out of this read-along as it suits you, your taste, what you want to be reading, what you have available on your shelves. So without further ado, let's go through the books. So for the first month, in the month of February, the most appropriate choice would be a book that is actually also Asian, because of the fact that the Year of the Dragon is the reason why I'm placing it this year. And so for the first book we are reading, After the Dragons by Cynthia Zhang. This for me is the only book that I will be rereading. This is a novella that I read a few years ago and I really enjoyed, and it's also a pretty different take on a dragon book compared to most of the other books that will be on this list. It's not really what you expect going into a dragon book. So this is a book that takes place in Beijing, China. It takes place in a near future in which ecological disasters have created these illnesses that are a huge threat to the population, but also dragons who over the century have been growing smaller and smaller are now kind of pet-sized, and there's this whole sort of like pet industry when it comes to dragons. We follow 2 young boys. One is an American who is coming over to China for the summer, I believe. The other one is a Beijing resident, and the Beijing resident is somebody who basically goes out into the streets looking for abandoned dragons in order to rehabilitate them. And then he, during his rescue attempts or during his efforts with these dragons, meets up with the other boy. This is also a queer story, and it talks a lot about disability in the sense of this illness that is going around in this city. Now for all these books, what I'm also going to be doing is I'm just going to be reading off the AI suggestions about who this book is for, because I think that will probably do the best job of trying to sell a book. So, according to Storygraph, After the Dragons by Cynthia Zhang is a good fit for readers interested in stories that explore the intersection of environmentalism, culture, personal identity, with a focus on hope and care. So, moving on to the month of March. So, as I indicated, some of these months we will be tackling series. So there are 2 series in their totality, which we will be tackling throughout this read-along. And in March we start the first one of these series. I always put one of these books, I always alternate between series and standalones in order to give people who want to read the series some time between it, so that it's not 3 months consecutive. If you fall behind the bandwagon if you fall off of the bandwagon a little bit, you can kind of catch up in the intermingling months. So in the months of March, June and August, am I counting this correct? No, right? March, May and July we will be tackling the Winnowing Flame trilogy, which starts with the book The Ninth Reign. Now I gotta say that like the synopsis that is here on Storygraph, for example, is super fake. It just talks about this kingdom or like a city that used to be like really well established, like sort of like the glory of its empire, and it now has become quite dilapidated. And then we are following one of its residents who kind of escapes the depressiveness of this downfall of his city by going off with a crew on sort of like adventures, hunting treasures, hunting demons, and as far as I'm aware, this also has some sort of like vampirical element to it. This was nominated by people who have read it, so because according to the synopsis it doesn't even mention dragons, but the covers definitely do also imply that this is a dragon-based trilogy. But let me read out the storygraph recommendation. The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams is a good fit for those seeking a thrilling and immersive fantasy adventures with a touch of dark mystery and vampire lore, perfect for readers who enjoy epic quests, ancient artifacts, and a dash of witty humor. So 3 out of the 12 months that we will be doing this read-along for will be dedicated to this trilogy. I know quite a few people who will be joining who have already read the first one, who are taking this opportunity to finish out the series. So the month of March we started the first book in this trilogy, which is The Ninth Reign. Meaning in April we move on to another book, and this one is actually the one book that I physically own. In the month of April we will be reading To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monogil Blackgoose. This is an indigenous author. We are also following an indigenous character who is going to a colonizer run sort of like magic school. So I'm expecting a lot of themes related to imperialism and decolonial literature. So our protagonist is a young girl who bonds with a dragon, and the dragons have not been seen for many, like they haven't had a hatchling for a very long time, so it's a very big deal for her to have bonded to a dragon. And this very much will look at sort of the clash between the established way of doing things and wanting to break the mold. Basically there's this way in which the colonizers think that a dragon should be raised the way in which, you know, she should be raising this dragon, she should be interacting with this dragon. They have their established opinions about what she needs to do, and she is trying to break free from that mold. According to Storygraph, this is a good fit for those seeking a story that challenges colonialism and celebrates indigenous culture, following a young woman's journey to assert her unique bonds with a dragon and forge a path of self-discovery and empowerment. I've heard really good things about this book. I'm so looking forward to this one. This is first in a series, but so far this is the only book out yet in the series, so you can get a start with this series by reading this book along with us. In May, as previously indicated, we will be continuing on in the Winnowing Flame trilogy by reading the second book, The Bitter Twins. In June, there's a little bit of a breather from the longer series and longer books that we will have been having for 3 consecutive months by reading The Tea Dragon Society. This is a graphic novel by Kay O'Neill. It is very short. There are multiple books within this sort of universe, so I think there are 3 or 4 graphic novels in this series. We will only be reading the first one. I think these types of stories are definitely suited as standalones, but definitely feel free to reach out to people within the Discord to figure out if you want to continue on reading more. This month might even be the opportunity because they will be very short. It's also, if you are fine with reading more of this in that month, you can maybe tackle all of them in one month. I will just be sticking to the first one unless I love it so much that I just cannot contain myself and read the other ones. Yeah, in terms of its story, I haven't really looked into its story. All I really know is cozy fantasy featuring dragons, and I think they have tea leaves in their horns or something like that, and that you can brew for specific types of tea. The Storygraph recommendation says The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill is a good fit for people who are interested in a heartwarming and uplifting story about friendship, community, and the power of tradition. So, moving on to the month of July, in which we will be finishing out the Winnowing Flame trilogy by reading the third and final book, The Poison Song. And then we will be switching on immediately into the second series that I have put on this read-along. The reason I put them back to back is basically because if we start this second trilogy in the month of August, it means we will be finishing it out in December. And for those of you who kind of keep track of your series progress from year to year, it might be nice to have it completed before 2024 ends, rather than have it spill over into the first month of 2025. So the second series that we will be tackling is the Draconis Memoria series by Anthony Ryan. This is a epic high fantasy series in which I believe we have a society where there's a lot of dragon hunting because of the medicinal properties of dragon blood, I believe. It says that The Waking Fire, so the first book within the series, which we'll be reading in August, The Waking Fire by Anthony Ryan is a good fit for those seeking an action-packed, high-stakes adventure with a touch of steampunk and a deep dive into a richly crafted world of magic and dragons. Another thing that makes me interested in this series is that we are following a thief. I like books following thieves as characters. They tend to be, you know, we all like a little bit of an anti-hero, I guess, you know, like somebody who's kind of flirting with the law, you know, what is permittable, what is permissible. But I'm hoping that I'm gonna absolutely love this one. If I do, then I'll definitely try out more of Anthony Ryan's works afterwards. But so we will be tackling this series in the month of August, September, and August, October. I really cannot calculate his intermingling patterns. So August, October, and December. So in the month of September, we are reading a first book in a series, I believe, or is it a standalone? No, it's a standalone. This is a new release. It comes out in July, and this is the newest book by Jen Lyons, who is the author of another dragon-based series, which is A Chorus of Dragons. It is compared to being like heavily inspired by the Dragon Riders of Pern, which didn't make it into this read-along. I also put it up for nomination, but it didn't get enough votes to be voted into this read-along. And I, as a consequence, also don't know what that means because I haven't read the Dragon Riders of Pern, but this is a fantasy sort of like classic. So the story premise as we're given is that we're following some sort of like recluse protagonist who gets rescued by a band and is kind of basically like grateful, but yeah, let me get back to my solitary lifestyle. However, that's not really what they had in store. They kind of want her to go back with them to the city where it's a sort of like cloud-based city, if I understand it correctly, where they want her help to steal from a dragon. And yeah, it looks like a high story. It's a standalone fantasy book, which is also always nice to have. And as indicated, I really love Jen Lyons' previous work, so I'm very much hoping that this will be just a repeat of the greatness that she achieved within A Chorus of Dragons. Storygraph says that The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons is a good fit for those seeking a thrilling adventure with high-stakes intrigue, daring heist, and a touch of romance, all set in a richly imagined world ruled by dragons. In the month of October, we continue on with the Draconis Memoria series by reading the second book, The Legion of Flame. And in November then we tackle a book that is slightly outside of the genre that you expect dragon-based books to be in. So this is more sort of like low fantasy, speculative fiction. This is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill, which seems to be more sort of like a literary fiction type of book. I'm not entirely sure what it is that, you know, it's speculative fiction looking at a contemporary setting, I believe, where at some point in the past women basically had this sort of like snap and they turned into dragons. I think this one will be very much sort of metaphorical, talking about this event of women turning into dragons as a sort of like unlocking of female rage. This book was very popular in 2022, especially I believe when it came out. A whole ton of people were reading it and loving it. Storygraph says, When Women Were Dragons is a good fit for those interested in stories that explore themes of feminism, identity and self-discovery, set against a unique and imaginative magical realist backdrop. In the month of December then we will be finishing out the Draconis Memoria series by reading the third and final book in that trilogy, which is The Empire of Ashes. And then we conclude this read-along in the month of January with the final book, which is a novella, which is Servant Mage by Kate Elliott. This is, as I indicated, novella, so we have a nice quiet small book to finish us out with. So basically we're looking at a freed slave who is entangled into a plot to kill the latest royal child. And it seems like she has some secret powers up her sleeve. So not much to go off of, but of course since it's a novella, you cannot give too much of a synopsis without potentially going into spoiler territory. It says here, Servant Mage is a good fit for those seeking an adventurous and emotional fantasy story with a strong female lead and a focus on magic, oppression and rebellion. So those are the books that we will be reading for the dragon-based read-along. As indicated throughout this video, I do have a Discord open for it. I'm not entirely sure yet whether I will just leave the discussions over on Discord, whether I will do storygraph buddy reads, whether I will potentially do live shows for them. That will kind of depend on the input of the people who are taking part in the read-along. I will link the Discord down below so that you guys can all join if you are interested in joining in with this read-along. Of course, you can also just like silently participate, just read them alongside with all of us and not necessarily interact, just use this opportunity to read these books. That is also, of course, totally perfectly fine. If you do join the Discord and you want to read some other dragon-based books, definitely take advantage of that to try and find some people who potentially want to read some of these other series that you have on your radar alongside the ones here, or just in the months that there are books up for grabs that you don't necessarily find that interesting, that you can try and find your people over on my Discord group to complete out your dragon-based reading year. But so yeah, let's go into this year and fully embrace the sort of like magic of dragons. I think this is the one sort of like element that a lot of people immediately associate with fantasy, is the existence of dragons. And so I feel like it's been a while since I really embraced dragon books. I've had a few here and there throughout the years, but I'm really looking forward to finally getting to a lot of these dragon-based books that I've been putting on my want to read list for years but never really prioritizing. And so finally this year we will be embracing that. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys will be joining me for a year of dragon reading, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!